Hello everyone, I am Tiffany the intern and this is On the Road Worship. Last week we talked about Jacob going to live with his uncle, falling in love with Rachel but ending up marrying Leah, and how God's promise to be with us and protect us doesn't always guarantee that things are going to be easy or go our way. In this week's story, Jacob has worked for Laban for a total of 20 years and has had 11 sons and a daughter, and is now on his way back home to Canaan. He has been informed that his brother Esau is on his way to meet him with 400 men. Jacob is terrified that Esau is going to take revenge for cheating him by killing him, so Jacob sends caravans of gifts ahead of him, hoping to soothe Esau's anger with the wealth that Jacob has collected, which ironically he acquired by tricking Laban. During the night, he gathers his wives and children and all his belongings and helps them cross the river. Jacob, however, stays back by himself. While he is alone, a man appears and starts to wrestle with Jacob. They fight all night, and when dawn starts to break, seeing that Jacob isn't giving up, the man strikes Jacob's thigh and tears a muscle and tells Jacob to let go of him since the sun is coming up. But Jacob isn't about to give up and demands a blessing before he lets the man go. The man asks for Jacob's name and tells him that his name will no longer be Jacob, but will be Israel, meaning one who struggles with God. Jacob then asks for the man's name, but the man asks why Jacob is asking for his name, but he blesses Jacob and leaves. Jacob realizes that he has just struggled with God face to face, but has lived. So Jacob limps away because of his injury he sustained as the sun rises. One thing that stood out to me in this story is that Jacob kept himself busy doing everything he thought he could to deal with this situation with his brother, but it was when he was alone that God engaged with him. It can be really easy for us to get caught up in our worries and doing everything we can to deal with them. However, it's important for us to take the time to be alone with God, and that's when the real change in our lives can happen. Another thing that stood out to me is that Jacob did not back down. He could have given up and decided that it wasn't worth it to go through all the pain and struggle. I mean, he did wrestle with God the entire night. I imagine that it was very exhausting, but he didn't give up. He knew that the blessing he would get in the end was worth all the pain and the struggle. Sometimes the change God desires to see in our lives is painful and exhausting, but ultimately it's worth it in the end. And Jacob walks away from this encounter with God with both a new name and a battle scar. His name went from being cheater and deceiver to one who struggles with God, which signifies an engaged relationship and not just a passive presence. When we enter into a personal relationship with God, our names change as well. We go from being called a sinner to a child of God. Whenever we see that someone has been injured, someone inevitably asks the person how they sustained their injury. And some of those stories are much more interesting than others. Some are rather comical stories, and others are deeply emotional and hard to talk about. But they all point to survival. The wound that Jacob acquired does not point to defeat or failure. Instead, it shows that he struggled and survived. Jacob had quite an amazing battle scar story to tell for the rest of his life. And like Jacob, we all have stories of both internal and physical scars from our struggles. So what are your scar stories? What do they tell of your struggles and your relationship with God? Think about and discuss these questions, and feel free to leave any questions or comments you may have in the comments. Take care, everyone.